Brittle Truths, Chapter 2. Then Caleb POV. The sleek, black limousine glided up the winding driveway, its powerful engine purring as it navigated the twists and turns of the expansive estate. Inside, Caleb sat in the back, his hands wrapped around a crystal glass filled with amber-colored bourbon. He took small, measured sips, savoring the smooth burn as it slid down his throat, providing a momentary escape from the suffocating grief that threatened to consume him. Beside him, his grandmother's disapproving gaze bore into him, her wrinkled face contorted with distaste. Caleb couldn't help but scoff at her judgment, considering she had already downed 3 full glasses of champagne at the funeral home. Her hypocrisy was almost as bitter as the alcohol on his tongue. In stark contrast, his father sat motionless, his gaze empty and unseeing. Though facing the back of the driver's seat, it seemed as if he were staring into a dark, endless abyss. The lifelessness in his eyes sent a chill down Caleb's spine, and he couldn't help but wonder if his father would ever recover from the loss of his beloved wife. As the limo wound its way through the meticulously landscaped grounds, Caleb's gaze drifted to the reflection of his father in the tinted window. A pang of sorrow twisted in his chest as he noticed the stark differences between them. His father's features were rugged and weathered, bearing the weight of his many years. His tan complexion spoke of a lifetime spent under the sun, a stark contrast to Caleb's fair skin that burned under even the mildest of rays. Caleb's thoughts drifted to his mother, her pale Celtic skin and jet-black hair so similar to his own. He remembered how she used to tease him, telling him he had inherited her looks, while his father always joked about Caleb being the milkman's son. The memories brought a bittersweet smile to his lips, and he took another sip of bourbon to wash away the lump forming in his throat. The smooth, golden liquid burned its way down, and Caleb longed for the numbness and detachment that came with the later stages of grief. He envied his father's apparent ability to shut out the world, to retreat into a cocoon of sorrow and silence. But for Caleb, anger still raged within him like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. For days, ever since the news of his mother's death had reached him, he had been in complete denial. It wasn't until today, standing before her frozen body in its ornate oak casket, that the reality of her loss had finally sunk in. The scent of roses and lilies had filled the air, a sickly sweet aroma that clung to his nostrils and made his stomach churn. The overwhelming sense of emptiness and despair had threatened to bring him to his knees, but he had maintained his composure, if only for the sake of appearances. Caleb's grip tightened on the crystal glass, and he brought it to his lips once more, relishing the burn as it slid down his throat. Fuck his grandmother's glare, he thought bitterly. If there was ever a day to get completely wasted, it was the day you buried your mother. As the limo rounded a bend, Caleb glimpsed the shimmering lake and the elegant gazebo draped in vines. The water rippled in the breeze, beckoning guests to come closer and find solace in its tranquil beauty. But Caleb knew better. Beneath the pristine surface lay a world of secrets and pain, just like the one he had grown up in. The meticulously groomed lawns and towering evergreens that lined the driveway spoke of a perfection that Caleb had never been allowed to disrupt as a child. He remembered the countless times he had been called back inside by his nannies, told to sit somewhere and stay silent like a good little boy. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind. Children should be seen and not heard. The memory left a bitter taste in his mouth, and he washed it away with another sip of bourbon. As the mansion came into view, standing 3 stories tall with its regal French chateau design, Caleb felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. The ornate columns and intricate carvings on its facade showcased the family's wealth and status, while also symbolizing the burdensome expectations and traditions that had long oppressed him. As the limo pulled up to the grand entrance, Caleb quickly stepped out and made his way to the other side of the vehicle to assist his grandmother. Despite his anger and resentment, he couldn't bring himself to neglect his duties as a grandson. He held out his hand, steady and strong, helping her out of the luxurious vehicle with ease. Her bony fingers gripped his arm, and for a moment, Caleb thought he saw a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. As they made their way towards the mansion, a blur of pure white fur caught Caleb's eye. His heart leaped in his chest as he recognized the familiar form of Charlie, the family's beloved Akita. The dog bounded towards him, tail wagging with unbridled joy, and Caleb felt a genuine smile tug at the corners of his mouth for the first time in days. He kneeled down, ignoring the disapproving look from his grandmother, and buried his face in Charlie's soft, thick fur. The dog's warm, wet tongue lapped at his cheeks, and Caleb couldn't help but laugh, a sound that felt foreign and almost inappropriate given the circumstances. In that moment, Charlie's love filled Caleb with hope, reminding him that not everything in his life was filled with grief and anger. As he stood up, brushing the dirt and dog hair from his suit, Caleb's gaze met his father's. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of understanding, a shared acknowledgement of the bond between a boy and his dog. In an instant it vanished, and was substituted by the same vacant stare that had plagued his father's eyes from the moment they learned about his mother's death. Inside the mansion, the oppressive atmosphere and extravagant decor only emphasized the weight of expectations and tradition that had always hung heavy in the air. Caleb's eyes were drawn to the larger-than-life portrait of his mother that hung above the fireplace in the drawing room, a painful reminder of the legacy he was expected to uphold. The painting was a beautiful likeness, showcasing her regal bearing and piercing blue eyes. However, it also served as a stark reminder of the impossible standards she had always set for him.
As his grandmother settled into a plush velvet armchair, she fixed Caleb with a stern gaze, her voice dripping with contempt. "Your behavior today at your mother's funeral was a disgrace to her memory," she spat, her words like venom. "She would have wanted you to behave better, to show some respect."
Caleb's jaw clenched, his teeth grinding against each other as the anger he had been trying to suppress threatened to boil over. He couldn't stand the hypocrisy, the fake condolences and pretense of family unity that had surrounded him throughout the day. "She would have wanted to be alive," he seethed, his voice low and dangerous. "But we don't always get what we want, do we?" The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Caleb's father remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the portrait of his late wife, while his grandmother's face twisted into a mask of shock and indignation. For a moment, Caleb thought she might lash out, unleash a torrent of abuse and recrimination. But before she could speak, a soft knock at the door broke the spell. Lucy, the Astor family's longtime housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, a tray of steaming teacups balanced carefully in her hands. Caleb felt affection for the woman who had been like a second mother to him. She was always there for him, offering kind words and comforting embraces when his own family couldn't. "Lucy," he whispered, rising from his seat to greet her with a hug. "Thank you for being here."
Lucy's weathered face crinkled into a smile, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, setting the tray down on the coffee table. "I couldn't stay away, not on a day like this." She reached out to clasp Caleb's hand, her touch warm and reassuring.
As Lucy busied herself with pouring the tea, Caleb found himself drawn to the tray of blueberry scones that sat alongside the cups. The aroma was intoxicating, a reminder of happier times spent in the kitchen with Lucy, learning to bake and sneaking bites of dough when she wasn't looking.
"My son will bring in some more soon," Lucy told the room, her voice filled with pride. "He's been working on a new recipe just for today."
At the mention of Logan, Caleb's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't seen the young man in 4 years, not since that fateful day in his bedroom when everything had changed between them. The memory of Logan's hands, one wrapped around his member, and later, the other delivering a brutal blow to his face, sent a shiver down Caleb's spine.